Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So Kamala Harris, she's still in her honeymoon period, it seems. She's become the nominee, but the energy, is it wearing off? I think the answer is probably. And we see this here. We see a lot of polls get released. Some polls that are released this week out of certain swing states from Cook Political Report. They've got tiny sample sizes and they're like 2 weeks old, and that's what the Harris campaign is clinging to. And they basically show her up by 1 in every single swing state except Nevada, where Donald Trump leads by 3. And it's like, statistically speaking, it's very unlikely you see every swing state vote just by 1 point in favor of Kamala Harris. And we know that a lot of these outlets have been releasing polls lately that are prone to what we like to call response bias. And that's not necessarily saying that we're discarding some sort of Kamala Harris gain, because I've said for a while, I believe that Donald Trump was leading Joe Biden by around 3 points, around 48 to 45. Donald Trump is not losing voters to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris probably gains more voters that were, disillusioned with Biden. Many of those voters probably would have come home to Biden anyways. You see the polls nationally, they have Harris at 48, Trump at 47. I think it's probably closer to Trump at 48 and Harris at 47. And this is just a massive shift overnight. Donald Trump was defeating Kamala Harris by only 1 point less than what he was defeating Biden by. But all of a sudden, overnight, when she becomes the nominee, you see a big spike in the polls. And again, you see some very wonky crosstabs, which usually cancel out. We saw them in the Trump-Biden polls. I said you don't want to crosstab dive too much. But when the crosstabs that are bad do not cancel out and just don't make sense, like when you have Kamala Harris winning white voters in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, chances are the poll is just not a very solid poll to begin with. It's not. They're missing voters, response bias. You go back to 2020, this is basically what we saw. And every August we see this. Biden was up by 8 points this day in history back in 2020. Hillary Clinton was up by 7 points. And we know that both of those averages were off by around, 3 to 4, in the case of Hillary, 5 percentage points. So people, I've said, need to relax, and they do. But even so, the polling does not look bad for Donald Trump. You have an Emerson poll that comes out that's Harris by 4, but here's the catch. They completely changed their methodology. And you see the race, turn on its head from their last poll. If you look at Emerson, you got to go all the way back here. Trump was at 49, Harris at 43. So now he's down to 46 and she skyrockets up to 50. Part of it is because you look at the favorable ratings and it's kind of proof. And I'm not saying she hasn't seen a spike. She's become the nominee. But when you're the most unpopular VP in history and 55% of the American public disapproves of your job, that doesn't instantly fall to 49 overnight. It doesn't. Double haters exist. People exist that don't like Trump or Kamala Harris. Maybe she did lose some soft disapproval and gain some soft approval. It's not enough to justify a 14-point swing on net virtually overnight. It's really not. But even then, when you look into the polling, Donald Trump is still in a good position. And this is the thing people don't understand. Even with a potential response bias, Donald Trump's favorable rating is doing very, very well right now, 44.3%. If you want to talk about election season, and back in 2016, it was like 36, 37-ish. And then you want to talk about 2020 election season, it was like, 42? Joe Biden was above water. Donald Trump is better off than he was then, and he just barely fell short with a lot of miracles that worked against Trump in 2020. And Democrats, they thought that they got Trump when they indicted him. They thought they got him when they ended up convicting him. They thought, we'll get him in a debate with Biden and we'll prove that Biden's with it. Yeah, that did not work out too well. Now they think that a candidate swap is going to change everything. And while we got to keep fighting for this election, definitely it's still going to be tight. We know that. It's not like it's all doom and gloom, and it's not like it's all over. And the polls are all over the place, and we know the polls are all over the place, but still, even in the aggregates, Donald Trump is doing well and well enough to win a lot of these states. How many times have polls in Wisconsin underestimated Republicans. Even Republican-leaning polls in Wisconsin have underestimated Republicans, like an average of 7 points on net in 2016 and 2020. Yet you look at these polls, you got the trash New York Times poll with the inexplicable crosstabs. They're not reaching the white working class voters that are representative of Wisconsin. But you see even the TIPP poll that got released today. I guess that is more of a right-aligned pollster. But Trump and Harris are neck and neck. And even in the Trump v. Biden polls that we saw some right-leaning polls in the mix that still had it close. Trump and Biden were neck and neck, even post-debate. In Wisconsin, Trump pulled ahead a little bit, and that could have also been response bias as well. I'm not saying it doesn't go both ways. Maybe Trump wasn't leading Biden by like 6 points, like a lot of these polls are saying. But on the other, flip side of it, Harris is likely not leading the polls by what she's leading them by. And I think that a lot of people know it. If you showed people the candidate Trump's facing and the aggregate a year ago, they'd be celebrating in Wisconsin. It's true. And it just goes far beyond Wisconsin. North Carolina, last couple polls, Donald Trump up 4, up 3. The Democrat-aligned Cook has Harris up by 1. PPP, Dem poll, Trump up by 4. A lot of these polls are old, but the 2 polls this month have Trump up by around 3 to 4. Early polling in North Carolina typically overestimates Democrats significantly. Even in 2022, you had Ted Budd neck and neck with Jerry Beasley, and he ended up winning by 3 to 4 points. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, that's where the election is going to come down. And we see another poll today that gets released out of the state of Michigan, and Donald Trump is tied with Harris, and he's leading the full field. So again, this is a pollster that was conducting this poll, and yes, it's from Fabrizio, but it's not just Fabrizio. That's a right-leaning poll side of it, but it was sponsored by the AARP. They had a Democrat sponsor of the poll as well, and what they showed is that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are neck and neck, and I've heard that Harris in her own internals is trailing Trump by a point in Michigan as well. And if that's true, it seems like Michigan, it's going to go down the wire. Harris might win Michigan, but if she gets Michigan, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to get the White House, because Michigan is probably the most liberal of the 3 major swing states in the Rust Belt. Wisconsin probably leans the most to the right, and then you have Pennsylvania. And you look at Pennsylvania, we see polls from Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac released a poll. Harris is up by 3. If you want to go to their final poll in 2020 in terms of Quinnipiac, okay, let's look at this. Biden by 7. They were off by, 5 points? And their poll in, I think, August, or one of these polls, Biden by 8 from Quinnipiac. I mean, seriously, they are not exactly a very good pollster in the Rust Belt. We even saw a Biden by 4, I think, in June in Wisconsin from Quinnipiac. And that obviously did not end up aging very well. So Pennsylvania, there was another poll from the 5-way race that came out from Franklin and Marshall, who also is known to overestimate the Democrats significantly. They've had Biden up over Trump this year as well. But you look at their recent poll, if it's in the 5-way aggregate, Harris by 3, which again, Kennedy's not going to get 6% at the end of the day. He may not even get 2% at the end of the day. But either way, it just goes to show that even the more liberal pollsters are showing Pennsylvania neck and neck with this response bias sugar high thing going on that's not exactly good enough if you are Kamala Harris. And they know it. They absolutely do. They're hiding her from the media. They're trying to extend the honeymoon period. They have the DNC. That probably, you could argue, may not work out too well for them. It might not work out too well in terms of just trying to go out there and, gain support. You might have some chaos going on. Either way, they've kind of basically had the DNC. They got their energy boost. How much more can you boost up that energy, and how much more could you even boost response bias? Because that's what most of convention bumps are from either side. There's probably only 4% of the electorate that's truly undecided right now. And I continue to believe that, which is why this election comes down to the voters that we get out. Fox News releases a poll they tend to be less prone to response bias from what I can tell. When Trump is up in a lot of polls, they were more cautious. When Biden was gaining, they had a more pro-Trump result. Now, you look at the Fox poll, Donald Trump defeating Kamala Harris 50-49. That's a plausible result for right now. Honestly, would not be surprised. Donald Trump, he got 46% of the popular vote in 2020. He upped that to 47, just around there, in the 2020 election 4 years later. So, it seems like his movement is growing. If he gets his voter base out, I could see that going up to 48-49. Harris probably is going to be around there as her ceiling at the end of the day, which is kind of the problem, because you're not going to have a lot of these Trump supporters bail. A lot of people have made up their minds on Trump. Harris, not a lot of people have made up their minds on Harris because they don't know Harris, and that's what the Democrats are banking on. They hid Biden in 2020. It's going to be a little harder to hide Kamala Harris at this stage of the game because still people need to understand who she is and who they're voting for, etc., and we know that. And then you see another poll out of Signal. This result is probably more plausible than some of these Harris +4, Harris +5 polls that we see. The crosstabs, for the most part, tend to make sense when you look into the poll. You see, and not all of them. I don't think Harris is going to win independents by 8, but it's possible that they undersampled Democrats and oversampled liberal independents. But you look at the white crosstabs, that's better than most polls. The Fox News poll had Trump barely winning whites, although, again, the crosstabs canceled out because they had Trump winning Hispanics. I don't think that's going to happen. This result is historically good for Trump with Hispanics, but it's plausible. I could easily see him crack 40. The black total is probably around what you would expect. I could see Trump getting 14. It'd be on the upper end of my expectations, but it's possible. A lot of young black men don't like Kamala Harris at all. I can guarantee that. But you look at this, the favorables make more sense. I still think it's lofty for Harris. Not a lot of people know Tim Walz. J.D. Vance is not universally hated. And the issues make sense why Trump would be up by 15 on the border, Harris would be up 15 on abortion, etc. Again, these are not big leads for a Democrat on Social Security or Medicare. Some of these are not really big leads. Democracy, only by 4. They've kind of dropped that because they can't really win that argument anymore with Kamala Harris at the forefront because they threw out their primary results because Biden couldn't beat Trump. And Trump puts it very well when he's like, it's like a fighter who is getting beat up badly. Then they switch out a new fighter who's fresh and new. And I think Trump still probably is going to beat the second fighter. And we see another indicator. This one's more trivial. It's not definitive, but this is a straw poll from the Iowa Fair. It was dead on accurate in 2016 for the presidential race. 2020, it did not happen because obviously COVID. But you look at this, Donald Trump beating Kamala Harris in the Iowa State Fair straw poll by 21 percentage points. That is absolutely huge because this poll was accurate. Trump definitely had the enthusiasm advantage. Maybe that is why it was overestimated, but it had Trump up by 11. He won by 9. 2022, they'll point to and they'll say, well, Chuck Grassley was overestimated. But again, midterm years are very different. The sample size of the poll likely smaller as well. But you look at this and it's like, even if you want to say it doesn't matter, it showcases that the enthusiasm for Kamala Harris, you would expect her to be doing very well in the straw poll here. Because if she's supposedly really getting a lot of this enthusiasm, but you didn't see a lot of support for Kamala Harris. You did for Donald Trump. Even if you adjust for the 2022 error, it still would be like a 10-point win for Trump, which means he's doing much better in the rural areas in eastern Iowa, which means that he's likely going to do better in the driftless area in Wisconsin, 20% of the state electorate. If he does really well in that region, he's going to likely take Wisconsin because I think he's going to hold his own elsewhere. So you see that. It's a little tidbit. It's interesting, and we'll have to see what happens. But Donald Trump, he's not fazed. He's saying, we're doing well. The enthusiasm is great. We're going to get millions more votes, and hopefully we do, because that's what the election's going to be decided by. It's going to be decided by how many people can we get out to vote. I see a lot of people getting involved in the ground game. That's great. There's many ways that you can get involved. Contact your local party. If you're in a swing state, download the Turning Point Action app. I think you could just start phone banking off of your phone and get voters out to vote. I mean, if you care about this, you want a stake in that victory, that's what you got to do. We need people volunteering. Make sure you get 10 people you know out to vote who are slightly apolitical, maybe open to Trump. There's a lot of ways you can convince them. Maybe I'll do a video or something on that as we get closer, probably next month or so. But Trump is bringing back Corey Lewandowski, and he is praising his current campaign team, his campaign managers. He has been making adjustments in his messaging from what I can tell, which I think is good and it is needed. He's not doing many rallies. Some people are upset about that, but I mean, Kamala Harris it is doing one rally this week, and then she's doing none the next week, obviously because of the DNC. But Donald Trump is basically coasting, and he's still in a very, very good position to go out there and win this election, even with the August polling. You know, people want to even talk about the midterm polling. Go look at the midterm polls in August. You know, John Fetterman was beating Dr. Oz by like 9 points. He only won by, 4 to 5? So again, the response bias is real, and even in election cycles where the final polls have overestimated Republicans, if you go back to August, it's still there. And Democrats have a reason now to answer the polls, and they're doing that. It's not like Trump voters are fleeing. So again, like I said, very few people are undecided, but we need to make sure that we get as many people and inspire as many people to get out to vote so we can win, because we are up against the machine. We cannot necessarily deny the strength of the Democrat operation, how many people just willingly fall in line with the media. You cannot underestimate that. But I think that there's enough Americans that are intelligent and can think for themselves and will be the people that will put Donald Trump back in the White House, complete that comeback story. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.